We are talking about maturity. We're still looking for a better word than maturity. Hopefully, we'll find something that reflects a little bit better what we're talking about. But in the meantime, the the key that we want to look at right now is the idea of how to detect and understand predictability. Let's try to tease that apart a little bit. We are each born with a certain nature, and events in our lives contribute to our responding in certain ways, if those be good events or traumas. So we have an inborn nature, we have the nature that we developed over time because of the events in our lives. And those responses sometimes are very good, and that's all nice. But they are limited in terms of their range. That means that when the situation is different, then if I only have a certain natural response, I'm going to tend to respond in accordance with my history, with my story, with the way that I was brought up, or the way that I was affected by the events in my lives. That takes away from my ability to be appropriate. Now let's be clear about this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, is looking at the entire situation. That means from all history to everything in the future and everything about the present. Is looking at the entire situation with all options open to him. And he therefore is choosing to act based on everything that ever was and ever will be, and based on every possible option. So there's no option that he doesn't have available to him. A person, as with anything that we're doing to try to be similar to Hashem, we are trying to increase the range of our options and the depth of our understanding of a given situation. So that means that the more we understand about a situation and the more options we have, the closer we come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now that doesn't mean that we become HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That means that the process of thinking about our options and thinking about the situation can be a tool for dveikus, for being mahu af ata. Just as he is, so you should be. So that this idea of becoming like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always, I'd say the word always, but we always qualify that. It means that we are going from the narrow range that we were born with to the expanded range that we develop so that we can respond to the situation in more and more appropriately. We can never respond to the situation completely appropriately because we never know the whole situation. We can't possibly know all of the details of the situation. Ein ledayon elama she'enov ro'os. Somebody who's making decisions is limited. He doesn't know all of the circumstances. That only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do. That's why Chazal tell us that we could never punish somebody perfectly, because anything that we would do in response to somebody who did something wrong cannot take into account all of the people who are impacted by that punishment. Kadosh Baruch Hu takes all of that into account when he intervenes in a situation. So but the process of thinking about expanding our range, of thinking about understanding the situation better, of thinking about alternate ways of responding, those thoughts, that hisbonenus is an act of coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not that we're just interested in being more mature because being more mature is a better way to live. That is certainly true. But our investment, our interest in that hisbonenus is because we want to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the first step in that process is opening ourselves up to reflecting on what we do. And most people, when they think about a cheshbon hanefesh, when they think about what they did or what they didn't do, they're usually judging themselves. Is what I did good? Is what I did not good? What do I need to do differently? This is a little bit of a different hisbonenus. This is a thought of, did I have other options? Could I have understood the situation more broadly? So it's not just, did I do good, did I not do good? This is not about getting a grade from your third grade teacher or a star on your forehead. This is about expanding options with an eye towards becoming more like the Ribono Shel Olam. So the first thing to notice is to notice your predictable patterns. Now, you're perfect, but I still have predictable patterns that are carryovers of my history, of the events in my life, of just the fact that I didn't think. And so there's predictable responses that are simply, they have my name on them. And sometimes that's very good. It doesn't mean it's always bad. It's predictable, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. It might be quite good. But it will not help me if the situation changed. You know, the old expression that if all you have is a hammer, all problems start to look like nails. If all you have is your standard way of responding, of your standard set of responses, then when the situation is different and calls on a different response, that other response won't be available. It won't be available because I'm kind of locked in, narrowly locked in. So this hisbonenus is just to stop and think and become familiar with my standard patterns. The other part of the hisbonenus is considering other options. Now, we mentioned last week, and I just want to bring it up again. If you want to test for other options, the first place to check is to test for the option of doing nothing. Saying nothing, not thinking the thought, not doing the action, not allowing that feeling to come into the world in action at all. Silence. Not because silence is good, although it often is, but not because silence is the right answer, although it often is. It's because silence is almost always an extension of my range. It's an expansion or an extension of my possibilities. So I have the possibility of doing what I did do or what I'm thinking about doing, but I also have the possibility of not. And there I am taking a leap towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because look how often situations come up and it appears as though HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in silence. Mi kamocha ilmi mashem. Is there anyone more mute and silent than HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And so David HaMelech says about himself Va'ani ki'ilen. I was able to get myself to the point where I'm like a mute. That doesn't mean that it was always correct to say nothing by any means. And he often said, and he said Tehillim, and he said many, many things. And he spoke about Torah, and he led a people. But he said that he had expanded the range of his available responses to always be able to include nothing, silence. And in the process of expanding his range, he came closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, who so often simply remains silent in order to give us more room to exercise our choices. So what we've touched on today is a little bit more understanding of the idea of the predictable, which is the idea that we are all wired a certain way, and we all have a narrow perspective where we tend to miss some of the nuances of the situation that we're looking at. The hisbonenus is to try to do two things. One is to see if the situation, perhaps, we can reveal some more insight, more depth of the situation. Somebody once mentioned to me that there was a Holocaust survivor grandfather at a wedding, and everybody else was happy, and they were saying Mazel Tov to the parents, and of course he was included. They said Mazel Tov to him as well. And I saw two people speaking, and they said, it's a different Mazel Tov. It's a different Mazel Tov. For somebody who didn't have the wildest dream of even living through the war, to be able to be standing witness at a grandchild's wedding, that's a different Mazel Tov. And so when he went over to say Mazel Tov to that grandfather, it was a different Mazel Tov. That's an expansion of the range by understanding a little bit more the nuance of the situation. Not like he wasn't going to say Mazel Tov, but he saw a little bit more depth in the situation and was able to respond. So we're always doing that hisbonenus of increasing our openness to understand more nuance than we picked up before, and to expand our range so that we're exercising and flexing a muscle to be able to have other responses other than our natural wired response. And in so doing, we are coming closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And so the first place to check for expanding our range is always towards Elaine, is towards doing nothing, not because that's the right response, but because that is invariably an expansion or an extension of our predictable responses.